Hello there.
Hi.
So today we're talking about a juicy subject, sex before marriage. Let's talk about sex,
Fabulous.
baby.
Okay. I immediately said fabulous, and then I'm like, ooh, okay, this can get tricky. What do you mean about sex before marriage?
Okay, so Brené Brown often talks about the difference between shame and guilt. Okay. And society has placed a lot of pressure, specifically on females, around sex, and especially sex before marriage. Over the last 100 years, being a virgin was seen as the big thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And so what happens is that even though there are a lot of young women today who are saying, you know, I'm sexually open, I'm very independent, this is my body, I get to choose. I find when they come to see me, a lot of them are still sitting with enormous amounts of shame.
In what sense?
In the fact that they're having sex before marriage. And the shame isn't something that is a conscious thing. So I kind of got to the point, and I want to know what you think, is I find that shame is an embedded belief. It is something that is a situation that I feel I did something wrong by being the nature of who I am.
Okay.
So I am lustful.
All right.
And so I'm horny.
Okay.
And, I am inquisitive, so therefore I'm going to have sex.
I want to say, well, maybe I just want to have an experience, and I want to have this experience without the obligation of having to marry the person before I can have the experience.
Yes, or maybe I don't want to marry anyone.
Absolutely. Maybe I just want to try and have sex.
Yes,
exactly.
And so what happens is there is a degree of shame that is almost an ancestral, a belief system that has been passed generationally from female to female or family to family systems, where doing that is wrong. So it's not about the act, because the act would be, I feel guilty because I did something.
Yes.
Guilty as in it's a verb, I feel guilty for having had sex. We're talking about I am ashamed. I feel I am wrong for wanting to do that. I am wrong, not the act is wrong.
I get you.
Wrong.
But so it almost sounds like I am wrong for having a desire. I am wrong for wanting to have an experience. And I feel like there's so much complexity just around your statement when you said sex before marriage, because I feel like traditionally it is, and I feel maybe this has changed over the years, but I feel like there's almost like this, that is something, and I get that it's sacred, and I get that why humanity has felt like that is something that needs to stay in a marriage, because there's so many things that can come with sex. But I feel like if we're talking about the guilt because you have a desire or a need to have an experience, you need to maybe understand why do you have that need. And this is interesting. Why is the need, whatever it is that you're trying to experience, why is it that you believe that you can only find it in sex?
Well, my logic is we've been given the equipment.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no way and one can address this through multiple religions, through multiple aspects. I truly believe we were created perfectly. And I can also tell you, quite honestly, that I know me having an amputation, losing part of my left leg, I realize how perfect we were made as humans. Because that part missing has significantly changed how I experience living in this human body.
I get you.
And what happens is why would we be given organs, sexual organs, if not to actually enjoy them?
I get you.
And why would we be given pleasure aspects if not to enjoy and take pleasure from them? And why should we feel guilty or feel that we have to follow a timetable for that to happen?
I get you.
Now, naturally, there's obviously risk.
Yes.
Because one has to say, okay, is the person mature enough?
Yes.
Are they in a safe space? Are they using the right reasons to engage in sex? Because some people might use it to get validation.
Yes.
Others might use it for manipulation.
Absolutely.
Or all the millions of reasons.
Reasons that they can possibly.
But that's their choice.
Yes.
Their body, their actions.
But I love what you just said, the fact that it's their body, their choice. So in essence, it's not really anything to do with the fact of marriage before or sex before marriage. I feel like marriage is something that has been used to almost like control or ensure safety around something that can actually go in so many directions. And yes, the reality that when you wait until you marry to have sex, I have seen people then having sex in marriage and then realizing that the compatibility is not there at all. And in the end, they literally come to a truth within the connection, within the marriage, where they say, but this is not where we actually match. We don't connect. And then marriage was almost like used as a
experiment.
Yes.
Or an experiential tool.
Exactly. Yes. And that just for something that you wanted to experience, but believed that marriage was required. Now, here's the thing. Even when you're married and you're having sex, there is nothing that guarantees that when you're having that sex and you are married, that someone is going to own up to the, I almost want to say sorry for lack of words now, for the rules and regulations of a marriage. You get that is, and I feel like marriage has been used to safeguard something that will never be safeguarded.
No, it can't, because it's an agreement between two individuals who have a right to set up their own rules.
Absolutely.
And those rules cannot be governed by any external party.
Absolutely.
It cannot be governed, it doesn't matter, by state, by church, unless you choose that you're going to bring in state and you're going to bring in your faith and you're going to follow those edicts. But you need to choose that. You cannot have anything from the outside push down their values onto you. You need to be able to decide for yourself, decide with your partner, and hopefully you are in alignment.
Yes.
And then draw in influences that are going to bring you joy and harmony, irrespective of what that might be. If you decide that you want a throuple or a, what is it these days, the polyamory, or you actually have an open marriage, that's your business.
Absolutely.
But you get to choose.
Yes. And I feel like no matter whether you do sex before marriage or in marriage or after marriage, wherever you fit it in, it needs to resemble and symbolize where you are comfortable with sex. And I feel like marriage is in no way, I almost want to say warranty for something that you're going to engage in that says, because we married, you now have to
And nobody likes to be controlled. And I'm going to say to you, don't think of cheese.
No.
What's going to happen? You're going to think of cheese.
Exactly.
And so if you decide with your partner, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that, what's going to happen is obviously the brain is going to go there
and explore it.
So it's got to be a choice.
Yes.
It cannot be rules thrown down on you, because all that's going to happen is it's going to embed guilt and shame.
Exactly.
And I wish so many younger girls come to me, and moms and dads don't have this conversation with these girls.
Absolutely.
And so what happens is they need to talk this out. They need to understand what's important to them. They need to talk about what their urges are, what their desires are, without judgment, so that they can feel safe.
Yes.
And they can feel they have a place to express that, because the more you repress it and say you can't, and it's against this and it's against that,
the more attractive it becomes, for all the wrong reasons.
For all the wrong. So actually they end up doing the very opposite of what they want to do.
Absolutely. And it's almost like, because there's a part that says, I'm not free to be who I choose to be.
Yeah.
And I feel like what we also need to do is stop waiting for permission to be individuals, to not necessarily go with the mainstream, to not necessarily go with what everyone else is saying. If you're doing what you're doing and making the choices that you're making because it feels right to you or it feels good to you, by all means do it. Even if society would frown upon you and like, no, that's not right, that's not how you were brought up, that's none of that would matter, because you're doing what essentially feels right to you, and that must be the ultimate point. That it feels right to you. And in that way, you basically are able to release the shame and the guilt that society, that people, that even your ego dynamic might put on yourself, or your, I almost want to say, growing up and how parents told you.
Great. At the end of the day, own your truth.
Yes.
Accept if you make mistakes that it was your choice. So try not to become the victim.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then if anything does go wrong, speak to someone and get help to understand and unpack what has happened so that you don't attract that back into your reality.
But I also feel like be brave enough to ask the difficult questions to yourself. Be brave enough to go into all those possibilities that society says, these are the things that might go wrong when you do that. To have that conversation with yourself and actually ask yourself, what am I willing to own of those things that can go wrong? And if you realize it's not just society that's scaring you about what could go wrong, that it actually scares you as well, then you can make choices for yourself that makes you navigate in aspects that makes you feel comfortable about the decision about when you're having sex and how you're having sex.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I think we're done.
Bye.